Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Cam, and welcome to my spoiler-filled video talking about The Rise of Skywalker. Spoiler warning from here on out, but I'm sure if you clicked on this video, you already know that. Let me just say first and foremost that if you liked this movie, great. As long as you're having a great time at the movies, that's all I care about. But I am going to trash this movie. It's not going to be pretty. It will be accurate, but it will not be pretty. The biggest problem that I have with this movie is that it doesn't know what it wants to be. It was clearly reactionary on the part of Disney, who saw the fans' reactions to The Force Awakens, feeling that The Force Awakens was too much like A New Hope, and The Last Jedi, feeling that it was way too different and it portrayed its favorite characters like crap. And so they went back to the drawing board and made this Frankenstein's abomination of a movie that tried to please everyone, but by trying to please everyone, they pleased no one. The Rise of Skywalker tries its hardest to justify the existence of The Last Jedi by helping to explain some of the stuff that Rian Johnson put out. Like, they tried to explain that Snoke was, I guess, birthed out of some kind of bantha tank, I want to say, because in one of the first scenes of the movie, there's this big bantha tank with, Snokes, not a Snoke, but multiple Snokes just brewing in there. And then it immediately cuts to Emperor Palpatine, who, as I said in my spoiler-free review, is not here by accident, and it was clearly an attempt by Disney to try and get back some of the jaded fans. Didn't work. And as I was mulling this over on the drive home, I realized that with the exception of Kylo Ren, everyone in the new cast is just plain unlikable in this movie. Finn is just there useless, thoroughly useless. Poe just either complains or is worried all the time. And Rey, while I do not subscribe to the whole Rey is a Mary Sue theory, well, let's just say that this movie gives that community a lot of ammunition to fire. She is grossly overpowered in this movie. And there is precedent, though. According to Screen Rant, the time between The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi is just about 1 year. And during that time, Luke Skywalker goes from a scared boy without a hand to basically becoming a more respected Jedi Knight. And the time between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker is about a year. In that same amount of time, Rey learns more Force powers than Luke ever did. In Return of the Jedi, Luke's Force powers are just left to a Force choke and just a lightsaber. But in The Rise of Skywalker, Rey has perfect balance, can levitate in the air with several thousand rocks surrounding her. She can pull a not a Star Destroyer, but a Star Cruiser from the air to the ground. Oh, and she also has Force Lightning. Again, not subscribing to the Mary Sue theory here, but, well, this movie does her no favors, let's just say that. But by far and away, the biggest insults, those 2 points that I mentioned where my friend and I almost walked down to the theater, well, one of them, I have a feeling you all know, is Rey Palpatine. Yes, that's right. Rey is the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine. Let me try and unpack this. According to this movie, the Emperor Palpatine had a son. Were we ever going to be told about this? Apparently not. And apparently that son got married and had a daughter named Rey. Those two parents sold Rey into slavery because Rey was going to be delivered to Emperor Palpatine to make her basically Empress Palpatine. Complain about The Last Jedi all you want, but in my opinion, I like the fact that Rey is basically a nobody from nowhere, because it by far and away makes her more interesting. and it implies that the Force is not just limited to certain groups of people. The Force can be sensitive to absolutely anyone. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from, or in the case of Star Wars, what species you are. If you can use the Force, then, that's just great. All of this leads into a bigger problem that I have with the whole sequel trilogy at this point, is the fact that The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker were directed by J.J. Abrams, and The Last Jedi was directed by Rian Johnson. J.J. Abrams utilizes the mystery box style of directing. In The Force Awakens, he planted seeds for the garden to grow in what would eventually happen in The Rise of Skywalker. When Rian Johnson was brought in, he was like, alright, let's dig up the seeds and let's burn them. Basically, Rian Johnson rewrote J.J. Abrams' murder mystery. And Disney, being reactionary in this case, were like, JJ, can you come back and try and figure something like this out? And J.J. Abrams, God bless him, he tried his hardest, but it didn't work. I felt like in my spoiler-free review I was a little harsh on J.J. Abrams. I like J.J. Abrams. I think he's a good director. I praised him for his visuals in this movie, and on the whole, I think that he has directed more good movies than bad movies. I love Super 8, I like Star Trek 2009, and I even have a soft spot for Star Trek Into Darkness. But unfortunately, Abrams was made the captain of a sinking ship, and he tried his hardest, but just came up short. Again, not attempting to trash The Last Jedi in any way, but if The Last Jedi were even written by J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson could still direct, but if J.J. Abrams had just written the script for The Last Jedi, so the Abrams connection was still there, I think that the sequel trilogy would be more streamlined and would make more sense. Because J.J. Abrams tried to fit his ideas into the Rian Johnson mold that was left behind, and it didn't work. But I think an even bigger insult that this movie gives us, the fans, is that it tries to play with our emotions by weaponizing nostalgia. And weaponizing nostalgia gets thrown around a lot, but in this movie, the nostalgia gets laid on thick. In one of the very last scenes in the movie, when Rey is at her lowest moment, she is about to be destroyed by Emperor Palpatine. She looks up at the stars and she is like, "Be with me. Be with me." And in the stars, you can hear Liam Neeson, Hayden Christensen, Frank Oz, Samuel L. Jackson, etc. What do all of these have in common? They were former Jedi. The movie tries to cram some sense of finality that is completely unearned. And this, more than anything else, comes across as desperate. And I think what's even worse about The Rise of Skywalker is how good it could have been, and how good the sequel trilogy could have been. Because in a vacuum, I like The Force Awakens, and I like The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi is a mixed bag, but I still like it. But there were so many stories that you could have told that would have been far better than what we actually got. You could have told a story about how Ben Solo turned into Kylo Ren by turning his back on his parents and joining the dark side because he lost his identity and he wanted to find a place in the universe. And by the end, he would be redeemed, despite the fact that he played a part in both of his parents' deaths. You could have had Poe, a former spice pilot, who goes and joins the Resistance because he turns his back on his life of crime to fight for something much bigger than himself. You could have Rey, a nobody from nowhere, discover that she is Force sensitive and goes to various Force users and learns how to use it, and eventually confronts, hell, you can even throw a resurrected Emperor Palpatine in there if you want to, and destroys him once and for all. Like, she actually learns from Luke Skywalker as her as her master. And that was technically done in The Last Jedi, but far better than what we actually got. Hell, you even had Finn, a former stormtrooper, who turned his back on the stormtroopers and was like, I'm through with this life, I am done. And does everything in his power to try and turn to the light side. Those stories I just pitched to you, admittedly, are not great. I am not a screenwriter, I do not claim to be. However, in my mind, all of those ideas could be far better than what we actually got. With the power of hindsight, it was just like Disney just being like, throw some Star Wars on the screen. People will pay us. Well, unfortunately, it does not work that way. This movie will probably make a healthy chunk at the box office, which of course it will. But after this, I still hope that these movies take a break, at least for like 5 years. I'm still fine with them making The Mandalorian and all the standalone shows. Kenobi, I'm still looking forward to that. But I'm so burnt out. I am so done. Star Wars Twitter is just depressing. It's like Mos Eisley Cantina. You will never find another hive of scum and villainy. We all must be cautious. I leave you all on a very somber note, because when I did my spoiler-free review, I was angry. But now, having thought about it and marinated on it, I'm sad. I'm sad that I didn't like this movie, like, minus the visuals and Ian McDiarmid. I wanted to love this movie. I want to love Disney Star Wars, but unfortunately, I just don't. My name is Ryan Cam, and may the Force be with us all.